The book is set in England in sort of this mythical Middle Ages. It's a retelling of Shakespeare's King Lear from the point of view of the fool. And the problem with the play is set in a mythical Middle Ages, because the real King Lear lived in like 400 BC. So there's no castles, there's no dukes, there's no earls, there's no knights. You know, there was like a mud hut and King Lear. So I sort of had to synthesize Elizabethan English with modern American slang and what I hope is British humor or British style humor, and then make the history sort of generic Robin Hood, I guess you would call it, because there's castles and there's knights and there's earls, and basically the convenience of those things that I needed to tell the story in a setting that was familiar to a modern audience. And so I wasn't the first one to get the history wrong, Shakespeare was. I actually intended first to write a book about a fool, because I've done a book about a trickster, which is Coyote Blue, and I've done a book about demons and different sort of avatars of irony, if you will. And the fool was the character who could speak truth to power in the medieval times and even in the Renaissance times. And I thought that was an interesting sort of archetype, in that you had this character who, by virtue of not being taken seriously, could say things that no one else in court could say and criticize the government, the ruling class, or whatever. Going all through Shakespeare, what you learn is that Shakespeare borrowed pretty much everything that he ever wrote. He only had 3 original plays. All the other ones were taken from other stories and histories. And so you feel pretty licensed to take whatever you want from him. And in Fool, although it's mainly based on Lear, it has passages and paraphrases and characters from at least 12 of the plays. And some of the more obscure plays like Coriolanus and stuff like that. But the witches from Macbeth are in it. I moved the whole geography of the book so that I could have the witches from Macbeth in it. But it's so hard because you've got to bring something new to the table. And with taking a tragedy and making it into a comedy was not so, I won't say it wasn't as difficult. It was the hardest book I've ever written. But it was, there was a clear difference in what I was doing. Whereas some of the other things that would inspire me, the comedies inspiring another comedy, would be tough. And I don't know that, I certainly need a rest from Elizabethan English for a while before I would want to take on another Shakespeare project. I'm not saying I won't do it, but this was hard. I want to think in modern American idiom for at least one book before I go back to some archaic form of language.